بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يسعدني أن أقدم لكم الشيخ حمزة اليوسف. هو مفكر وداعية إسلامي أمريكي، درس الإسلام وتنقل في بعض الدول العربية والمغرب العربي. أسس معهد الزيتونة في كاليفورنيا في الولايات المتحدة. شرفنا وحضر إلى مدرستنا لمدة يومين ليشاركنا ببعض أفكاره عن الإسلام. أتمنى أن يكون هذا اللقاء مفيد لنا ولكم، ونتمنى أن نستضيفه إن شاء الله في المستقبل أيضا. شكرا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا، ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. First of all, thank you for inviting me. Sheikh Salim, I'm originally a resident and a student of the United Arab Emirates. I studied here between 1979 and 1984. So I lived here when Shariqa was much smaller. None of the boys here were born yet. But I've been coming back every once in a while and seeing the changes that have been quite radical. In terms of, talk to the boys first before addressing any issues. I guess most of the parents are probably working or something because there's a lot of chairs that are empty, but the boys' chairs are full almost. So one of the things that I wanted to say, I mentioned to the principal and some of the teachers here that one of the major problems now for the students is the types of distractions that you have. What in Arabic they call mulhiyat and mughriyat. There's a lot of distractions for the young students. You young boys have distractions that were not around when I was very small and learning and studying at your age. You have a lot of toys, electronic toys, that waste an incredible amount of time and have been proven also. There's a lot of evidence that many of these games are harmful to brain development, and they're actually having effects on the brains that haven't been fully studied. So one of the things that I suggest really is that you strengthen the policy about television and electronic toys. The Prophet ﷺ said, مِنَ الْمُرُؤَةِ أَنْ يَسْمَعْ أَحَدُكُمْ لِأَخِيهِ حِينَمَ يَتَكَلَّمْ. That it's part of muru'ah or manliness to listen to somebody when they're speaking to you. Especially young people, if you don't listen to your elders, you won't benefit very much. So a lot of these toys are a complete waste of time. So I want to talk to you a little bit about your time. Time is the gift of life. You have time, but your time is allotted. You know what allotted means? It means you have a limited amount of time. None of you know how long you're going to be here. None of you. And it's a good thing to go visit a cancer ward in a pediatric unit in a hospital, because you can see children that they've got cancer, they're literally dying. And that happens. So none of us know how long we're going to be here. You want to make the best of your time while you're here. And especially during education, you have a limited amount of time. You're going to be here and it goes very quickly. Just like the summer goes quickly, the school year goes quickly, and it gets quicker and quicker as you get older. So you have a very limited amount of time, and it's very important that you utilize that time. The Prophet ﷺ said, نِعْمَتَانِ مَغْبُونٌ فِيهِمَا كَثِيرٌ مِّنَ النَّاسِ. Two blessings that the majority of people are cheated out of. الصحة والفراغ. Your health and your free time. Leisure time, your spare time, the time when you're not preoccupied. One of the blessings of having parents is that they take care of you. You don't have to work. You don't have to go out and find food for yourselves. You have time now. Your parents are working. Your father and your mother are taking care of you. And you have time to study and to develop your mind and your intellects and tools that you can use in your future. If you don't use this time, how many of you have seen the film Pinocchio? Almost everybody. All right. Do you remember Pleasure Island? Pleasure Island in Pinocchio? You remember? You, there, raising your hand. Yeah, you remember Pleasure Island? What happened there?
The boys could do whatever they want. They could eat as much as they could, play as much as there was no time.
And what happened? What did they turn into? Donkeys. Hamir. Because they could do whatever they wanted, they could eat whatever they wanted, they could play whatever they wanted, they turned into a hamir. You know why? Because people that don't occupy their time when they're in school and utilize their minds for education, they end up working manual laborers, what they call ummal. They end up working manual laborers. It's the hardest life on earth. Because when you're 45, 50 years old and you're still using your body to lift bricks and build buildings and do these type things, it's a very hard life. But those people, there's no fault in people because it's halal livelihood and they're not donkeys. Those people out there doing that, but they didn't have the opportunities that you have. If you were given this opportunity to learn and you don't use the opportunity, then you are a himar. But if you were born in a place where you couldn't do anything else but become a laborer, there's nothing, it's not your fault. You didn't have the opportunities. And if you're living an honorable life and a halal livelihood, then you're a good person. But people that squander the blessings they've been given, they're worse than donkeys. And that's what you don't want to become, like the boys on Pleasure Island that wasted their time. Pinocchio was on the way to school. And he got tricked into going to Pleasure Island and forgetting about school. Right? So, it's very important to utilize this time. And also health. MashaAllah, some of you might have asthma, you might have eczema, you might have some things that are problematic. But generally, everybody here was able to walk into this room and sit down by themselves. That's a blessing. Some young people don't have that blessing. Many old people don't have that blessing. The fact that you have your physical health is a great blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You should utilize it. In a hadith that Ibn Abbas, and Ibn Abbas was a young boy. He was about your age. Most of you in here, he was about your age when he was learning from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Some of the boys from the Quraysh and Ansar said to Ibn Abbas, come play with us. He said, no, I want to go sit and listen to the Prophet ﷺ. And they said, oh, there's plenty of Sahaba doing that and they're all learning. And he said, but they're going to die and then who will be knowledgeable? And so they went and played and Ibn Abbas went to learn. Later on, the boys said when they saw Ibn Abbas become a scholar and people honored him and people sat at his feet, they regretted the time they wasted when they were young people at the same age of Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. Ibn Abbas relates a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, اغتنم خمسا قبل خمس. اغتنم خمسا قبل خمس. غنيمة. Ghanima yaghnamu means to benefit from something. Ghanima is like something you get from struggle. You struggle and you get the rewards of your struggle is like what they call in English booty. Like some type of anfal. So he said benefit from 5 things before 5 things. The first one he said, Shababaka qabla harimika. Your youth before your old age. Who can tell me how long shabab lasts? Right there. Good. That's 40 years old. From the age you're in now, you're in the shabab, until you're 40, you have strength that you don't have after 40. It begins to diminish because life is what they call in English curvilinear. In Arabic, muqawwas. You begin here, you get stronger, 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 hatta balagha ashuddahu. You know, he reaches his strong point, balagha arba'ina. When he reaches 40, he's at his peak, it's downhill from there. And then you begin kuhula, and then shaykhucha. Shaykhucha You know, زعمتني شيخا ولست بشيخ إنما الشيخ من يدب دبيبة. A man proposed to a woman. She said, "You're too old, you're sheikh." He said, "She claims I'm an old man, but I'm not. A sheikh is the one that walks around slowly. I still have some energy." Sheikhucha is the last phase. And then right before, the final phase is ajaz. Ajuz is after sheikhucha, you become ajuz. You can't do anything. So when you have your youth, it's a great blessing. Do you know what shabbat an-nar means? Shabbat an-nar? Shabbat an-nar. You don't know? Shabbat an-nar. Ishta'alat an-nar. Shabab is from ishti'al. It's the time you have fire, you have energy. And you have to use that energy for good. Don't waste your life. Don't waste your time. The Prophet ﷺ warned us about ida'at al-mal, wasting wealth. The next one he said was صحتك قبل سقمك. Benefit from your health before your sickness. If you, لا قدر الله, may Allah give you all عافية, يمتعكم بالصحة والسلامة ما دمتم أحياء. But if you get sick, one of the حكماء, he said, الصحة تاج على رؤوس الأصحة لا يراه إلا المرضى. That health is a crown on the healthy, only the sick can see it. It's a crown on the healthy, only the sick can see it. So your health is a great blessing. Guard your health. Some of the shabab here already getting pouches, not good. You guys need to exercise. Don't eat bad food. Don't eat McDonald's. Don't eat it's bad food. Really, if you knew what was in it, you wouldn't eat it. Don't eat, really take care of your health. Eat good food, healthy food. Don't eat a lot of food. The Arabs, they say, al-bitnatu tudhib al-fitna. Having big stomachs will cause your intellect to deteriorate. I just read 3 days ago in the International Herald Tribune an article on a study done in Sweden proving that the bigger the waist expands, the more mental deterioration there is. And they actually have proven that young people that have too much fat around their girth or their waist, they actually are already developing plaque in their brains. So exercise, get out, run around. You have your health, take advantage of it. You need to recreate. Exercise is a good thing. You have to recreate. Don't be studying all the time. But also don't be playing all the time. There's a time for each one. Right now you have to have balanced life. And then he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said to benefit from your malaka qabla faqrika. Benefit from your wealth before your poverty. Some of you are given allowances. Don't squander your allowances. Use them for intelligent things. As you get older, you see a lot of people waste their money. Wallahi, I was just in Mecca and Medina, and the amount of food that is wasted from people in those hotels. They go to the buffet and they pile their plate and then they leave their plate at the table and like it's nothing. Israf. Kulu washrabu wala tusrifu. Eat and drink, but don't be wasteful. Don't be extravagant. Innahu la yuhibbul musrifin. Because God doesn't love people that are extravagant or wasteful. My wife and I, we took food every single time there was food left over. We took it down, and there were poor people on the streets of Mecca that were so happy to get the food. Don't think there's not people here in this country that if you brought them food, they wouldn't be happy that you gave them food. Wallahi. So really recognize the sacred trust of having blessings. Some of you come from wealthy families. Don't squander your parents' wealth. Utilize it on good things. There's orphans. You can pay $30 a month. My wife and I have an orphan in Indonesia. We get letters from this orphan. $30 a month, supporting an orphan. You can do that. Simple things that you can do at your age. Now, and then he said, فراغك قبل شغلك. اغتنم, utilize your free time before you're preoccupied. You're young people now, you have a lot of free time. You have a lot of free time. You're young people, but your free time is going to be lost. You won't have it forever. You'll get preoccupied. Sayyidina Umar said, تَفَقَّهُ قَبْلَ أَن تَسُودُوا. Learn fiqh. Learn how to live before you're in positions of authority. We have ministers in many countries now, not just Muslim countries. In the West, you know Dan Quayle, he was a vice president in the United States. He misspelled potato. It's a famous story. He wasn't very bright. You know what he said when he got elected vice president? If I knew I would have got this far, I would have studied harder in school. You don't want people in positions of power that are not educated. You don't want doctors that didn't study hard. We have doctors now that cheat on their examinations. They go to school, they don't study, they cheat. Now, how is that going to be when you go to get surgery and the doctor doesn't know what he's doing? And that's why the number 4 cause of death in the United States is from doctors' mistakes. Number 4, according to the Journal of American Medical Association, the number 4 cause of death in the United States is iatrogenic diseases, doctor-induced diseases, misdiagnoses, giving medicines people don't need, mistakes they make in treating the patients. You don't want doctors like that. You want doctors that know what they're doing, that studied hard. You know what they call a graduate from a medical school who got D's all the way through when he graduates? They call him doctor. And he might be your doctor. So you don't want to be that type of person because you have a trust to so benefit from your time. Don't waste your time. And then he said, وَحَيَاتَكَ قَبْلَ مَمَاتِكَ. Benefit from your life before your death. You have a short time here. You don't know how long it is. Maybe 20 years, 30, 40, 50. Maximum, you're going to go maybe 100 more years, maximum. 120, people don't live beyond that. Very rare for somebody to exceed 120. Most people now, average death is between 60 and 70 years globally. The Prophet said, أَعْمَارُ أُمَّتِي مَا بَيْنَ سِتِّينَ وَسَبْعِينَ. It's a miracle of the Prophet because he said, the lifespan of people after my religion starts until the end of time will be between 60 and 70 years. That's a miracle of the Prophet ﷺ, that he didn't need to do statistical studies to find out the mean, the median, and the average lifespan. Allah told him how long people were going to live for his ummah, which means Muslim and non-Muslim, because it includes everybody after his message. So he said, أَعْمَارُ أُمَّتِي مَا بَيْنَ سِتِّينَ وَسَبْعِينَ. So most of us will live between 60 and 70 years. It's a limited amount of time. My suggestion to you, don't watch television except maybe on the weekend, and then watch things that are worthwhile. I wouldn't just watch waste things. If it's a film that has some good meaning or something useful, or there's a lot of interesting National Geographic and other programs that you can benefit from. Some of the programs that use good Arabic, you can learn Arabic. So there's even some of the cartoons and things are using Fusha, that you can benefit from that. But don't waste a lot of time doing that. I wouldn't watch television during the week because you have to study. And then the time that you're not studying, instead of watching television, you should be out kicking a ball around, getting some exercise, exercising your body, visiting your friends, doing intelligent things with your friends. These are the things that you should be preoccupying yourselves with. And I'll finish with a story I told the girls, all right? Because it's useful for you as well. There were 3 fish in a lake. One fish was brilliant. The other fish was intelligent. And the third fish was ahmaq. Samakun ahmaq. A stupid fish. All right? And one day, the lake wasn't big. One day a fisherman came and he started casting his net. So the intelligent fish, the brilliant one, he said, it's time to head for the sea. because the lake is too small and will get caught in the net eventually. So he left, went to the river, down to the sea. The smart one, he said, that's the most intelligent fish in the lake, and if he's heading for the sea, I'm going to head for the sea. The stupid one said to him, it's a long journey to the sea, and it's a big lake, small net. We should just stay here, enjoy what we have. Nothing much has changed. He disagreed, he took off for the sea. So the third one, the stupid fish, he got caught in the net. And then the fisherman took him out and he was frying him. And in the frying pan, as he was frying, he said, if I ever get back to the lake, I'm heading for the sea. Okay? So, don't be like that last fish. Life is a journey to the ocean. You're not meant to just stay in your limited understanding. Expand your mind. You don't get trapped in the trivialities of, in safasif al-umur, the Arabs call it, low things. Terbisu iblis. Don't let these dark forces pull you away from your higher calling. To be productive, intelligent, human being that actually has something to add to the world, and you're not just filling space. Too many people filling space and not benefiting others. All right? In terms of the parents, I hope you take seriously the advice about television. Television's a major problem. These games are a major problem. You should read some of the studies about it. PlayStation Nation is a good book to read about serious studies that have been done about the negative effects that these games actually have on neuroplasticity, on attention deficit disorder. There's a lot of work that's been done in this area. Obviously, it's not published because the same companies that own the newspapers, right, own the shares in Nintendo stocks, right? Really. There was a book written in 1958 called The Evil Eye, which took me a long time to find. I read about it as a source book in another book. I found a copy in Australia on the internet because it wasn't ever reproduced. This book had documented research from the 1950s about the negative effects on television on children that were done, serious scientific studies. One of the studies that was done found that small children will not watch real-time television. They get bored. So a 3, 4, 5-year-old, they won't watch a movie like regular people. They just get bored. So that's why if you look at children programming, it's speeded up. It's not in real time. So Sesame Street, it's all quick things, changing images. Now we have the MTV phenomenon, which is children that grew up on that type of programming cannot watch normal films. If you watch a film from the 1950s, they're very slow. If you watch them from the 40s, they're very slow. They're driven by dialogue, not by movement. Now, all the films are driven by quick moving, car crashes, bombs exploding. It's all stimulation. Because young people can't watch. If you watch plots like Crash, older people that watch those films can't even keep up because it's just too fast for them. This is what's happening. And then we have attention deficit disorder is a major problem in the developed nations and increasingly a problem in other places. 1 out of every 58 males in the United States of America is now diagnosed with autism. Tawahud. 1 out of 58. It's a disease that wasn't even identified until the 50s. And very handful of people. Now, since the 1980s, there have been a massive explosion of Asperger's disease, autism, and you're starting to see autism now in the Arab countries. Children are overstimulated, they're becoming hyperactive because you're putting them in front of all these interactive things so they can't sit in a classroom without fidgeting and getting completely, their train of thought is lost. They can't concentrate for long periods of time. They won't be able to read books. A book like The Brothers Karamazov in English literature is a long book. There's a lot of plot changes. There's a lot of characters that you have to keep in mind. If you've ever read Russian literature, you have to memorize several names to keep up with what's going on. And some of the characters have 3 or 4 different names. You won't have students that are able to read that. They won't be able to read the great literature of the Arabs, Mutanabbi, Badi' Zaman al-Hamadani, al-Hariri, Ibn Muqaffa'. They won't be able to read the Hamasa, Ibn Mubarrid, any of these things, because it takes directed thought to do that. So there's a massive responsibility now. And you can't just be like sheep that kind of accept everything that happens and just, يعني خلاص, تقدم. So a lot of these things are not progress. They're quite the opposite. There's a study going on right now. It's a major long-term study on the effects of cellular phones. But the American Association of Pediatric Physicians says that children, before their skulls are developed, shouldn't be using cell phones because the skull is too thin and the radiation is reaching their brain at higher levels. We don't know if they're going to have tumors in 10, 15, 20 years because this is a guinea pig generation. And we have something which is called the cautionary protocol. The cautionary protocol, which is used by Europeans and Canadians, and the Americans just because of our kind of capitalistic enterprise and stupidity, refuse to follow that cautionary principle. The cautionary principle states, if you're unsure about the harmful effects of something, then you should have precautionary measures before you actually do it until you find out whether or not it's harmful. If in the volcano in Europe, that was based on the precautionary principle because the Europeans practiced that. A lot of the American commentators were saying they should have let the airplanes fly, but the Europeans were saying no. We don't want to risk airplanes crashing and people dying because we're not sure the effects of these the volcanic ash is going to have on these airplanes yet. That's intelligence. It's intelligence. خُذُوا حِذْرَكُمْ. Be precautious. So you have to really think about what's happening because you're going to have problems with your children before you know it if you don't. And in Korea now they're thinking about banning broadband after 10 o'clock because so many of the Korean children are addicted to these video games and they're flunking out in school, having major problems. These are social problems that are going on all over the planet, and they're new social problems, and they're not being addressed intelligently, and a lot of the parents are completely ignorant about them. So that's all I have to say right now. If anybody has any comments or questions, you can feel free. And any of the young men out there, if you have any questions, feel free. Okay. Go ahead. You're the only one with your hand up. Go ahead. Yeah. What's that? Video games? There's several now. Young people have died from playing video games for extended periods of time. Literally, one child in Japan had a heart attack because he kept playing for several days and couldn't stop. I mean, obviously, the majority of kids aren't going to be doing that, but there are kids that get addicted or early. I personally, my kids don't play any video games. I just don't have them in the house. Sometimes they go to their friend's house and they do things, but I would not recommend video games personally. I know it's, some people think, it's unreasonable, but I've read too much of the research about it. I wouldn't do video games. I don't think they're healthy. And a lot of them, they're just total waste of time. There's nothing educational about them at all. Go ahead. Yeah. I mean, look, when I was a kid, you went out and played. You did things. You went out and played. I mean, life is much more interesting than a video game. Really. I lived with Bedouin kids in the Sahara. They're some of the happiest, well-adjusted kids I ever met. They spend their whole time outside, outdoors. Go outside and play. Say it's too hot or something like that. Get used to the heat. Really, get used to the heat. Most of you are Arabs. The Arabs say, "Ash-shamsu hammam al-Arab." The sun is the sauna of the Arabs. Arabs, that's why your skin color is the way it is, so you can go out in the sun. I can't go out, I get skin cancer. God knows what He's doing, where He put people and how they look and how they can handle their environments. You guys all in air conditioning. I lived in Al Ain for 4 years without air conditioning. in a cinder block house. I was 20 and 24. I lived in Al Ain for 4 years without air conditioning. The whole time. Because I don't like air conditioning. Half these guys are getting rheumatism now. You know, look at the older people in this country. They're all suffering, all having problems. These things aren't, you know, you guys are gonna, you'll see eventually. But, you know, أَخْشَوْشِنُوا فَإِنَّ النِّعْمَةَ لَا تَدُومُ. You know, Sayyidina Umar said, be tough on yourselves because you won't always have blessings. Most Western people can't sit on the floor. If you see Western people try to sit on the floor, their knees are all, they can't put that, they don't have any, why? Because they never sit on the floor. They always sit on chairs. I've been sitting on a floor all my adult life since I became Muslim. I can sit on a chair if a chair is there, but at my house I sit on the floor because I choose to. I can do a full lotus at my age. There's a yoga position that most young people can't do. It's only because I've always been sitting on the floor, so I have elasticity. Now there was just a study done about just stretching and how important stretching it was. You can learn things from cats. Have you ever watched cats? Cats are always stretching, you know. Cats are the most flexible animals in the world. And just watch them. Humans used to stretch. Now they're just shriveling up. Really, you see people that are 50, they look like they're 80. You see people that are 20 and they're behaving like they're old people. In America, we have people that are dead at 25, buried at 75. Really, living dead. People that have really, they're hollow people because they're spending so much time. We have pornography is a major problem in the United States. I just was at a conference in Princeton University, and there's published papers. I delivered a paper at that conference on pornography. One of the major problems in the United States of America, pornography addiction. It destroys families. It causes impotence. Males become impotent after they get addicted to pornography. 10 years of addiction, they've lost their potency. So what got them in it ends up being destroyed anyway. These are major problems that are going on now. And, you know, you're from a culture, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ. You know, this culture is a culture of modesty, and modesty is a beautiful quality. Europeans and Americans used to be very modest people, and there still are some modest people, undeniably. There's many good Christian people, there's many good, even secular people that have basic modesty and things, but many people now, they've completely lost their sense of shame and do things publicly that would have never been done even 20 years ago. Even 20 years ago. I mean, I see bumper stickers all over California with foul words on them, as if children weren't around, you know. I mean, my kids sometimes ask me, I've got a five-year-old kid that's starting to read, and he sees words that, you know, I can't even explain to him what they mean, because there's no shame. And I believe in preserving innocence of children. I don't want to see a sexualized culture where naked women or naked men are all over the place, and before children are ready to even grasp what these things mean. It's not like Aboriginal cultures, because there's Aboriginal cultures that don't have the same problems in a culture that's manipulating people sexually. Go ahead.
Don't video games have any advantages?
Yeah, there are. Like if you're going to go into surgery, then there's certain manual dexterity skills. Like you get very good at certain skills that you can do. If you're going into law enforcement, a lot of kids that play with those video games get very accurate. In fact, we had a kid in Virginia who shot 8 kids at school. And he got headshots on every single one of the kids. When the FBI came to examine it, they were amazed at this kid's marksmanship. It turned out that his father had bought him as a present a game that you got, the headshots were given the highest awards in the game. So he had actually mastered killing people in a video game, and then he just went to school one day with his father's gun, and he killed all these kids with headshots that he learned on the video game. So if you're going to go into the army, it's probably, there's some benefits like that. But, you know, those benefits, to me, are the harm is greater. And in our tradition, al-maslaha, which is benefit, is always looked at mafsada. You weigh the two. What's called dar al-mafsada wa jalb al-maslaha. Avoiding harm and accruing benefit. If the harm is worse, then you avoid it. And if the benefit's greater, then you do it. And to avoid harm is preferred over accruing benefit. So harm is considered first before benefit. So there are benefits, undeniably. Go ahead.
Some children are poor. How could they go to school so they can study?
What's that?
Some people are poor.
Yeah.
Poor. How could they go study?
A lot of them can't. There's children all over the world now that are they're laborers as children. It's happening all over the world. South Africa has a massive problem with child labor. India has a massive problem with child labor. Really, even in Egypt, you know, the Zabaloon, the kids that go out and collect garbage. We have this problem everywhere. In Morocco, there's kids that are your age that are working full-time, 15-hour days. You know, and that comes with social justice and a concern for others. So people like you, as you get older, you have to have commitments to changing those conditions. First, in your own place. It's always better to fix the place that you're at, and then extending that out. But you're lucky, you're fortunate that you don't have that problem. You're here, so utilize your time.
Who would have hard time moving their children away from the computer? Not necessarily games, just a laptop or something. Sometimes they get their little homework or something like that. And plus they find it very cool, being so strict. They say that's our leisure time, that's our free time. So do you have any other alternatives to make it?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of books in the United States that have been written on this that I wish the Arabs would kind of look at and translate into Arabic, like 365 things to do with your children that don't involve television. You know, that's a book. You know, it gives you a lot of ideas, like things you can actually do. Young people like to do lots of things. You know, my kids do archery. My two oldest sons are black belts in karate. You know, they've been doing martial arts. There's a lot of things that you can do that are really interesting. One of my sons is a painter. You know, he has oil paints. He actually paints amazing things, and he's 15 years old. You know, that was something he was interested in. We encouraged it because he showed talent and he was interested in, and I'd much rather have him doing that than wasting his time doing other things, because it's creative, it's imaginative. Einstein said if you want to have intelligent children, then develop their imagination. Painting is a great way of developing imagination. He does amazing pictures, really creative things. So there's lots of things you can do, but you have to be actively engaged with your children. Ashokhi has a poem about the yatim is not the one whose parents die. It's the one whose mother is ignorant and the father's too busy to be taking care of him. That's the real orphan, right? So you have to be engaged in raising your children, but it's a amana. People should not have children if they're not going to raise them to be good kids, because we all have to suffer the consequences of all these kids that grow up without real parenting and real education, and they end up, you know, the criminal class and all these Wall Street people that have no morals at all. Where did they grow up? Who was teaching them? You know, who was instilling in them a sense of right and wrong? My mother instilled in me right and wrong. She's a Christian woman with very strong moral principles. From an early age, I was told right from wrong. Not with religion. She didn't even associate it with religion. You just told the truth. And she lived that. She always was truthful in everything she did. That's what I learned from my mother. Be truthful. Be upright. Be honest. You know, respect other people, irrespective of who they are. Whether they're South Asian, Indian, some of the Arabs here treat the Indians like dirt. One day you'll find when India becomes a major power, it could happen in your lifetime. You'll be down there after all the oil's gone and there's nothing here, some of the Emiratis, you might be down there trying to get a job in an Indian corporation, and some of those guys are going to remember how their father was treated when he was working here. What comes around goes around. تِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. I mean, that's not a reason to be good to Indians, but it's a reality. So even from a pragmatic perspective, it might be a good idea just to treat people a little better than you're treating them. Filipinos here, some of them are treated like dirt. Some of the maids here are treated like they're subhuman. These are human beings. They had mothers and fathers. You know, they have emotional. I mean, I asked a maid in a house I was staying in a neighboring country. I won't say which one. I just asked her how she was doing, and she started crying. Literally started crying. You know, there's things going on. God knows what's going on. But Yawm al-Qiyamah, it's a big day. أَلَا يَظُنُّ أُولَٰئِكَ أَنَّهُمْ مَبْعُوثُونَ لِيَوْمٍ عَظِيمٍ. People don't think they're going to أَيَحْسَبُ الْإِنسَانُ أَنْ يُتْرَكَ سُدًى. People think they're just going to be left without any judgment. It's not true. Go ahead.
In what age does the kid, his mind gets okay for cell phones?
Well, cell phone, like I said, the research is still out. They don't know. Most of the studies that the cell phone companies did were in ideal situations. Because, for instance, if you have a cell phone here and the actual radiation is coming through your brain, that's different from when it's coming that way. So it just depends. I mean, there's ideal conditions. Most of the studies that the cell phone companies did were in ideal conditions. And I have a friend who's a CEO of a cell phone company, so I know I got this from first hand, right? So we don't know if it's safe at all, but generally before the age of about 15, because the brain, the jum-jum, you know, the skull is developing. So before that, if you're going to use it, even for adults, they should be used. It's better to use it with an earphone. Keep it away from the body. That's what they say. Hold it away from the body. Or use it with the voice on. Or text. A lot of young people prefer to text anyway. Texting is safer than that. But radiation is real. It's radiation. It's low-grade radiation, but it's radiation. People keep it in their pockets. We don't know how it's going to affect fertility rates. You know, La haya'a fid din, the male sperm count around the globe is half of what it was 50 years ago. So we know that, you know, fertility rates are being seriously affected. They think it has to do with plastics because plastics are estrogen mimickers. And so all this plastic that everybody's living in, everything's plastic, your car's plastic, a lot of people wearing polyester, that it's actually affecting our bodies. You know, so there's a lot of very troublesome things going on. But generally, I'd be very careful. You should not be spending a lot of time on a cell phone. Use it for emergencies. If you have a cell phone, they're useful tools. But I would use it for emergencies. I have a cell phone in my car. I don't like to use cell phones to talk on. You know, let me tell you something. There's a bomb, all right, in America. There's a bomb. It's called napalm. They used it in World War II. Do you know what napalm is? It burns the skin. It's a goo. It's like gel, all right? It burns the skin. They used it against the Germans in World War II when they bombed, aerial bombing of Dresden and Hamburg and these things. In Vietnam, they were using napalm. What the Viet Cong would do is in the village, they would make a big water basin. And so if the napalm hit them, people would get hit by napalm and they would run and go in and submerge themselves and it would stop the effects of the napalm so their skin wouldn't burn. So you know what they did in the United States? They developed napalm that was waterproof. All right? We have people like that. They're sick people. They don't think about the moral implications of what they're doing. So the same is true. Greed, you know, the Arabs say, "At-tama' yudhib al-aql." Greed makes the intellect go away. You can't think when you're greedy. You know, you can't think. So people are greedy, and you have to be aware, these people could care less about you or about your health. There have been many times where they know things are harmful and they hide it from the people. The tobacco industry knew that tobacco was addictive in the early 60s, and they hid it from people. We had class action suits in the United States. You know what the deal they made with the tobacco industry in the United States? This is all history. You can read all this stuff. The deal the United States government made with the tobacco industry in the United States of America is that we're going to shut down tobacco in the United States, but we'll make sure that you can export it around the world. You know where the biggest now markets for tobacco? China, India, the Arab world. We don't smoke in public. It's illegal in the United States of America to smoke in public. Illegal. You know why? La darar wa la dirar. Because secondary smoke is more harmful than primary smoke, so you're actually hurting other people. When I go into these Arab hotels here that are largely owned by Western companies, that in their own countries, they don't let them smoke. But here, they're all smoking, puffing away, without any concern about anybody else. You know what Thailand, when Thailand tried to outlaw tobacco, do you know what America said? It would take away its favored nation status. Because this is just Machiavellian politics. They don't care about people. They care about profits and money. They care about their own people to a certain degree. They don't care about other people. They could care less if you guys all die of cancer. As long as they make a lot of money from selling Marlboro, you know, and convince you that the Marlboro Man is something to emulate. In America, you know what our Marlboro commercials are? They show a cigarette that's wilted and they say cigarette smoking causes impotence because they want people to stop smoking. They don't have those ads over here. Seriously. Go ahead.
When a person he starts playing games and soon afterwards he becomes addicted. And when he hears that games are harmful, he tries to leave it, but it's impossible.
It's compulsory. That's a good question. Addiction's a problem. If you're addicted to something, most of the video addictions are low grade. A low grade addiction is like tea or coffee. You can give it up with a little willpower. Cigarette nicotine is actually it's a high grade addiction. It's very hard to give up nicotine. Some of the same things, because the brain, when you play video games, you get endorphic releases. So it's like a drug. Very similar to taking heroin or cocaine, has a similar effect. The same type of things are happening in the brain. So you want to do it again and again and again. But willpower is something God gave every human being. And the best thing that you could do, you have to get rid, the most important, single most important thing is to get rid of the stimuli. You have to remove it from the house. If it's in the house, you're going to be tempted. It's like an alcoholic who has a bottle of liquor in the cabinet. If he gets weak, he'll get tempted. The best thing to do is avoid it. Just don't get it out of the house. And there's times when you'll feel strong and say, I want to quit this thing. Those are the times when you should do it. And then you need help to be consistent. Find a friend who's willing to, you buddy up with him, and you both make a commitment together. We're not going to watch video games. Just do it for 6 months. Just do it for 6 months and see how your life changes. Make a commitment, I'm going to stop for 6 months. When Ramadan comes around, say, I'm going to stop TV altogether. 1 month, no TV at all, 0. People now, they watch more TV in Ramadan than they do in other times. You're wasting your time. Ramadan's a precious time. Ayam and ma'dudat. Ma'dudat is what's called jam'u qilla. You know, it's short days, few days. Go ahead, you.
Some people, like, their body gets used to nicotine so much that if they try to quit smoking or something, they'll die. So are they supposed to at least smoke once a day just to stay alive, or?
Yeah, no, nicotine won't kill you. There's nothing, zero scientific evidence that giving up nicotine will kill you. But they do have serious withdrawal symptoms. For some people, you know, if they're addicted to smoking, then it's true. Nicotine can actually be like a medicine for them, because they get so nervous, so angry, so frustrated. But they have nicotine patches. There's other things that you can do. They have nicotine gum that people can chew, because smoking harms the lungs. You know, nicotine is not good, but it's better to chew nicotine gum than to smoke a cigarette. And it has a similar effect on the brain that smoking a cigarette does. But people can quit. Many people have quit cigarettes. You know, I'm fortunate. I never smoked. You know, a few times I had cigarettes when I was in high school. Just kids try, experiment, because other kids smoke it. But I played a lot of sports when I was in high school, so I never wanted to smoke. Go ahead, you. Yeah.
As you pointed that in Ramadan people watch TV more than any other normal day. But at that time many Muslim scholars start telling saying about Islam. So why shouldn't we watch that?
I mean, if a program's worth watching like that, if it's a dars or something like that, then, you know, but I would prefer not. You can go to the masjid and hear a talk, or read a book, or listen to a tape cassette. There are other ways to get durus than television.
I want to ask you though, do you think the majority of parents have already, you know, got something in their house, the computers, everything. Yeah. Do you think that in these types of cases that parents should exercise restriction, or just eliminate them completely from the household, even if they've been there and their kids have been used to them, and all their friends, etc., etc.
For most people, to eliminate it completely is impractical. It's difficult because now there's so many things tied to the computer. A lot of people's jobs are related to computer and internet access, things like that. For most people, it's going to be impractical. I know many people in the U.S., not just Muslims. I know many non-Muslims that just don't have it in the house because of the destructive effects that it has. A lot of the Waldorf parents will not have them in the house, things like that. But you know, one of the things that is recommended is to have it in an open space. Don't have it in a private space where people can go. Even husbands, because we've got a problem with some of the men now that are getting addicted to things. In fact, I had a man ask me about it the other day, you know, that he was having trouble with that. We did a conference on pornography in Toronto before I did the paper at Princeton. And I was amazed at how many of the Muslim women in hijab came up to me afterwards and told me that they were having problems with their husbands. There are restrictions here, obviously. I think there's some internet control for those type things, but there's DVDs and there's other ways around that. So there are problems. But, you know, I would say have it in an open space with the screen facing a public. So like in a room where you can see the screen itself, so that when the kids go on it, you know what they're going on. And then also, obviously, you can check searches and things like that. So it's good to know what they're looking at. As they get older, trust is very important. You know, and to spy on your kids as they get older is actually a breach. And that can cause a lot of problems because you're going to create a deceptive child. So it's dangerous to do that, I personally think. I trust my kids. I've sat down with them. I talked to them about it. I found some films once. I mean, they were more like just very violent films. And I sat down with my kids and I explained to them. I said, I'm out here combating against these things and I can't have it in my house. When you guys turn 18, you're on your own. You can do whatever you want. But in my house, this isn't happening. And I trust you. I'm not going to talk about this again, but I trust you. And that's the way I do with my kids. I've never, and then I don't punish them if they do something wrong and come to me. I don't punish them. You know, one of my kids came to me and he just started crying. He was about 14, he started crying. And I said, what's wrong? He said, I went on the computer without your permission and looked at some, and he really felt bad about it. And I told him, I said, look, that is your damir. You know, it's your conscience talking to you. And always listen to that, because that will always be truthful. You know, so I just used it as an opportunity to encourage him that when he knows something's wrong, to respond to that. And don't ever be ashamed of that. That is the best thing that we have working inside of us, is that ability to know right from wrong and to admit our wrongs and then to commit to not doing it again. So, you know, that's what I would do. And you have to have some restrictions. You can't have an open, because kids are going to go on, and now they have a lot of these games that are free on the internet are designed by Nintendo and these corporations to get them addicted to higher games. So they're simple games, they're not that fun. It's all designed, they know exactly what they're doing. This is really well-researched stuff. They have lots of psychiatrists and psychologists on their staff that they do pupil dilatory studies on kids. I mean, there's a PBS documentary that you can watch, Merchants of Cool, which is exactly about what they're doing. These corporations, they're very dark, sinister forces. They could care less about human beings. There's a book that was written by Bakinin, which is called The Corporation. They made it into a documentary. And he's a psychiatrist showing from the Diagnostic Statistic Manual, which is used for psychiatric disorders in the United States, that all of the symptoms of sociopathic behavior are in corporate behavior. Corporations are sociopathic. They have no morality. There's nothing working. You might have moral people in corporations, but the corporation as a machine, which is functioning as a person because it has the rights of persons in Western law, is a sociopath. And the sociopaths are running the show. And the victims are these poor young people, as far as I'm concerned. Adults have no excuses. Okay, let me get some more. Back there, you. All the way back there. Yeah, you, looking back. It's you.
If the governor or president or whatever knew that the stuff are harmful, anything that's harmful for the country, why doesn't he just stop it?
Well, it's an excellent question. In the United States, certain things are illegal that don't make any sense at all in relation to other things that are legal. For instance, in the United States, marijuana is illegal, but whiskey is legal, or hard alcohol. Hard alcohol, any pharmacist will tell you that most alcohols are more harmful than cannabis. But the reason that marijuana is illegal in the United States is because the cotton industry lobbied heavily to get marijuana made illegal, because they used to use marijuana for all the things they use cotton for. So there's a history for the prohibition of marijuana as opposed to, right? So you have market forces. And then in the United States, in Western countries generally, censorship is a very sensitive issue, even though some things are censored. Right now it's going to the Supreme Court about pedophilia material that's done animated. Should they make it illegal or not? I mean, it's a major problem, right? So actually, because pedophilia, films involving sexual acts with children, is illegal. But they're arguing, and these are merchants that want to sell this material. They're arguing that this is animation. It's not, but they can make it look as real as regular film. These are major problems in the United States, and there's people that want to censor these things and make them illegal, and then there's other people that are arguing for no censorship. But in Islam, we here in a country like this, you know, we do have certain things that we don't want to see become public, accepted publicly, because there are standards, there are moral standards that we still adhere to that a lot of places, other places have abandoned. Whether or not people practice is another thing. That's a problem everywhere. Yeah, okay. One more question.
If cigarettes were harmful, why did they invented it?
It's a good question. Seriously, it's a really good question. It's an intelligent question. You know what? In the Quran it says, "Inhum kal an'am, bal hum adal." People that do harmful things for themselves are like animals. And then it says, "Bal hum adal." In Arabic, bal is a harf lil istidrak. It's where you correct something, even though it's not a mistake. It's used rhetorically. So it's not like God made a mistake. But it's to emphasize, no, they're more astray than animals. Why? The Mufassirun say, because animals will never purposely harm themselves. If an animal sees something harmful, it will flee from it. But human beings are sometimes, they do stupid things. I was once with one of my little boys and in a store, and there was somebody smoking, and they took in a puff and blew it out, and it was the first time my son had seen smoke, and he just looked up and he was shocked. He thought the person was on fire. And this person looked down and said, "Don't you ever do this." You know, so, but people are also mubtala, you know. The person doing it, you should have compassion for them. I'm telling you something, it's very important. People that smoke, you should have compassion for them. You shouldn't see them as evil people or bad people. They have an ibtila that you don't have. Whenever the Prophet saw people in tribulation, tribulation means if they're in something that's not good for them, he would say, "Alhamdulillah alladhi aafani mimma ibtaraka bihi." He wouldn't say it out loud. He would say it where they couldn't hear. "Praise be to the one who has delivered me from what he has tried you with, the tribulation, this hardship. وَفَضَّلَنِي عَلَى كَثِيرًا مِمَّنْ خَلَقَ تَفْضِيلًا," and has preferred me over so much of his creation. So, but people that sell cigarettes, people that sell alcohol, people that sell weapons, armaments to other people so that they kill each other, those people, no. They should be opposed, boycotted. But people that are in the tribulation, alcoholics, all those people, we have to have compassion for them. You know, really. And just thank Allah that we don't have that tribulation. So you have to feel compassion. The Prophet ﷺ felt compassion for people. Even there was an alcoholic at the time of the Prophet. His name's Abdullah. كَانَ يُلَقَّبَ الْحِمَارِ. It's in Sahih al-Bukhari. And he used to drink and get drunk. And they would bring him and punish him with sandal. They used to use sandal and they just like punish him for drinking. And one time a man said, this is in Sahih al-Bukhari, good sound hadith. A man said, Allahumma al'anhu. Oh God, curse this man, you know. Ma aktharahu ityana, or ma akthara ma yu'ta bihi. You know, he's always being punished for drinking. And the Prophet said, don't say that. La tal'anhu. فَمَا عَلِمْتُ مِنْهُ إِلَّا أَنَّهُ يُحِبَّ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولُهُ. Don't curse him, because he's a man who loves God and His Messenger. So even though he was an alcoholic, he still loved God and His Messenger. And the Prophet ﷺ, Ibn Hajar says that's the most hopeful hadith for the people doing major wrong actions. Because even if you're doing a major wrong action, it doesn't negate love altogether. It just negates complete love. Because complete love, you obey the one you love. Right? I wish I could answer all your questions, but that was the last question. Allah bless all of you, inshallah. God bless all of you. Give you good guidance. Inshallah, open your intellects.
I'd like to thank Sheikh Hamza for coming and spending the last few days with us. It was a request from the Board of Governors that he ultimately honored to give up his time. I know he's been very busy. He's just come from a tour of a few different countries. He's off this evening, or I believe tomorrow again. So the time that he has spent with us, I hope that we've learned something from him. Little humility. I believe that's also what Islam preaches, is to humble ourselves. And here, especially our students, we hope that you have picked something up from what Sheikh Hamza had to say. And I think the most important thing is that we have the book, we have the Holy Quran. We need to read that book. We need to make sure that we understand what's in there. We need to make sure that we also live out what's in that book. And one of the biggest thing is, I would say, is humility. It's nice to see that we have workers in our homes. And I think Sheikh Hamza was mentioning when he went and he stayed with somebody in a neighboring country about one of the maids. But if we can think about the people that work in our homes and the drivers that collect us, and when the kids are outside, and the boys and the girls or the primary, yes, in the school, we don't allow the maids to come in. When I first started here 7 years ago, we stopped that. But yet we still have the maids that will run up to the door to make sure that they collect your bag from you as you drop it down in front of them. Remember, they're people. Remember. All right, so if we could just work for a better environment, not only here at West Green, but throughout, and be better citizens of the world. Again, I'd like to thank Sheikh Hamza for the time that he spent with us here at West Green. It's been a long 2 days, I believe, with his assistants and colleagues, and we had a speaker yesterday for the boys, Imam Zed. So again, we appreciate the time that you've taken out for West Green School. Thank you very much.